From The National, this is Trending Middle East. I'm Yasmin Al-Taji. It's Wednesday, July 16th. Here are today's headlines. France is threatening Iran with UN sanctions if a deal is not reached on its nuclear program. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said on Tuesday that France, the United Kingdom, and Germany will together launch the UN snapback mechanism on Iran. That action will restore sanctions by the end of August if no concrete progress has been made on a nuclear deal by then. The National's Sunniva reports.
The snapback mechanism is part of a UN resolution that endorsed the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. It allowed the reimposition of UN sanctions on Iran if it's found in non-compliance. A European decision to trigger the snapback has been expected because Iran has violated its obligations since at least May 2019, experts say.
Barrot also said that inspectors from the UN's nuclear watchdog must be allowed to return to Iran, and a diplomatic process must be launched that leads to a negotiated settlement on Iran's nuclear program.
In concrete terms, it might not change much because Iran is already under a US embargo and most of the world has wanted to avoid being targeted because US sanctions apply everywhere, not just in the US. But triggering the snapback mechanism will exert more pressure on Iran for sure. It aims at further weakening Iran to force it to accept negotiations that will stop it from enriching uranium altogether. That's at least the US and French official position. They want zero enrichment. Remember that under the JCPOA, Iran could enrich uranium up to 3.67%. What we need to watch closely now is how the snapback mechanism, if triggered, affects relations between Iran and China and Iran and Russia. President Putin of Russia has said Iran should be allowed to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes. China has signed a 25-year cooperation deal with Iran and is its main oil buyer. China rejects unilateral sanctions and says trade with Iran is legitimate, so it's highly likely that triggering the snapback mechanism will be problematic for China.
Lebanese officials have received a response to their proposal to U.S. Special Envoy Thomas Barrack over the disarmament of Hezbollah. That's as Israel launched airstrikes on the Bekaa Valley on Tuesday morning. The response was delivered via the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, according to a Lebanese source familiar with the talks. Some Lebanese media reports have suggested the U.S. had set a timeline for Hezbollah to disarm by the end of the year, but the Lebanese source familiar with the talks didn't confirm. Here's the National's Jamie Prentis with more.
Lebanon's state news agency said multiple airstrikes were carried out throughout the day, including one which hit a Syrian refugee camp, killing 7 Syrian refugees in that single strike alone. Israel said the attacks were a clear message to the Lebanese government and Hezbollah that they would never allow Hezbollah to be a threat to Israel again.
U.S. Special Envoy Tom Barrack told The National at the weekend that Lebanon faced an existential threat if the issue of Hezbollah's weapons wasn't resolved soon. All this as the Lebanese parliament convened on Tuesday for a session to question the government over its performance since taking office this year.
Lebanon's leaders are under pressure from a variety of factions in parliament for a number of different reasons. Some are calling on the government to commit via its cabinet to disarming Hezbollah. Others say more must be done to stop Israel's daily attacks on the country. Ultimately, the Lebanese government finds itself in a very delicate situation. It's facing pressure internally and externally to disarm Hezbollah, whilst Hezbollah itself is asking why should it be disarmed when Israel continues to bomb the country on a daily basis and occupy 5 points of Lebanese territory.
In Israel, an ultra-Orthodox political party has said it's quitting the government. It's a major blow to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, whose coalition government now has only a thin majority. United Torah Judaism is the name of the party. Its move is the latest in a dispute over whether Israel's growing ultra-Orthodox population should serve in the military. Military service is compulsory for all other Jewish Israelis. The National's Thomas Helm is here with more from Jerusalem.
The issue of whether the ultra-Orthodox should serve in Israel's military has been going on for years, right back to the very founding of the State of Israel. During that time, the Ultra-Orthodox were on their knees as a community. They had been devastated by the Holocaust, and very few made it to Israel in the early days of the state. And the country's founder, David Ben-Gurion, decided to give them exemption from military service so that they could rebuild their small numbers. As the years went on, the community increased in size very successfully, but the exemptions remained. And as they got larger and larger, the fact that they weren't serving, alongside very preferential financial benefits that they were given to stay in their insular religious institutions, started to anger other Israelis. But the issue really came to a head last year when Israel's Supreme Court ruled that these exemptions were unconstitutional. Now, that created a big crisis in the coalition in which the ultra-Orthodox parties form a significant chunk of Netanyahu's seats that he relies on for his majority.
The departure of UTJ leaves Benjamin Netanyahu with 61 seats in the 120-seat Knesset. If another ultra-Orthodox party called Shas also quits over the issue, the government will be left with only 50 seats. Israeli media reports are suggesting that Shas will quit later this week.
It's a major blow for Netanyahu, but it's not necessarily a critical one. It's important to note that although they are angry with the coalition's treatment of this issue, the opposition in Israel is bitterly opposed to any exemptions for the community's young men to serve. And therefore, there's probably a widespread understanding that leaving this government would present them with far fewer political options. It's not certain whether, even outside the government, these protesting ultra-Orthodox parties will take significant steps to collapse it. They might just be satisfied with keeping Mr. Netanyahu's government a minority one until they can find some sort of a compromise that brings them back into the government.
That's all for this morning's headlines. You can get these stories and follow live updates at our site. Yasmin Al-Taji, The National.